Although this video will not contain major spoilers, I should say that if you have not caught up somewhat to where Dragon Ball Super is right now, and if you haven't really seen the Dragon Ball Super series, this video will contain minor spoilers about what Dragon Ball Super has generally gone through up until the Tournament of Power and the events prior. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video and let's get this party started. So, the first thing we have to talk about is the Goten and Trunks filler. Now, I understand that there are a lot of people out there who have been expecting there to be a filler episode with Goten, Trunks, and Marin, considering the fact that they're protecting Android 17's island with all of those animals, and that there would obviously be a lot of poachers that would be coming around to obviously create a threat to those animals, and Goten and Trunks are two strong kids that could actually fight them off. And although I think that that would be great filler, and I think that it could advance their characters in some ways that's even greater than the Potafu arc, the one problem that Dragon Ball Super has at this point is that this far into the Tournament of Power with Universe 7 versus Universe 11, I think that it's too late for this filler to actually have been relevant. But in terms of filler, I actually think it would have been a nice solid 1 to 2 episodes that would have actually have given us more of an out-of-world reality and realizing that things are still going on Earth while the Tournament of Power is still going on. So in terms of the Goten and Trunks filler, I definitely think that this is something that Super has wasted with their characters, and I don't think we'll ever see it at this point, considering that the Tournament of Power is already pretty much at its finale. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is dealing with fighting potential. Now, this is something that is more of a development issue than anything else, but when you look at Goten and Trunks from the beginning of when they first came into Dragon Ball Z, they had arguably the most potential that any characters have ever had. Now, it's very arguable if you say they actually have more pure potential than Gohan, but at the same time, these were two characters that were able to go Super Saiyan at such a young age. Even though they required fusion to do it, they also learned how to go Super Saiyan 2 and 3. They definitely learned how to go 3, and it's arguable that they learned how to go Super Saiyan 2, as that's obviously a step that they probably had to ascend to. So you have two characters that with their fusion states they could do so much, and if they had continued training, the sky was essentially the limit as to how strong these characters could be, considering the fact that both Goku and Vegeta are also so powerful now. So the ceiling that Goten and Trunks have is significantly higher because of how strong their dads are, which means that their potential is way higher than what it ever would have been in the Buu Saga, which means that the door to writing their characters was essentially limitless in terms of just talking about their power. So in terms of their fighting potential and how they could have fought against other characters, I definitely think this is one of the key reasons that Dragon Ball Super has wasted both Goten and Trunks. Now, I want to talk to you guys about two more things before we get to our finale reason that I'm sure many of you guys would predict. But the next point I want to talk about is dealing specifically with Kid Trunks. Now, specifically when it comes to Kid Trunks, I definitely think something that has been wasted has been the potential bond between Kid Trunks and Future Trunks, and I understand that Dragon Ball Super did touch on this. There were moments with Future Trunks and Kid Trunks that the series has had, but I don't think that they really touched the surface of how far they could have actually have gone with this. First of all, it's pretty easy to differentiate the characters considering the fact that one of them now has blue hair and the other one has purple hair. But when you actually look into their characters, I think that you could have created a much stronger brotherly bond between Future Trunks and Kid Trunks. I think you could have had a training session between both characters so that the present Trunks would actually be more similar towards the Future Trunks, at least in terms of attacking and abilities. And I think that creating more slice of life between the characters, because there were a lot of filler moments that were created during the Future Trunks arc where they were in the past, and I think because of that, I think a lot of moments could have really have been developed in showing how much of a connection that the present Trunks could have had to his future connection. And although I appreciate Dragon Ball Super for having Future Trunks interacting with the present Gohan the same way he had a relationship with the future Gohan, I still think that having the present Trunks Trunks have more of a bond with the future Trunks would have made the show significantly richer, and I think it would have developed all characters because it would have shown how Trunks impacts all characters at once, with certain characters getting more development than others. So in terms of the brotherly connection there, I would definitely have to say that that was something I felt could have been more touched upon. And last but not least, guys, before I get to our finale, I wanted to talk to you guys about Goten and Trunks in terms of how Goten specifically has been underutilized. Now, I did a video with Geekdom about a year ago where we talked about how Goten is unlike Goku and Gohan. He had virtually no development. He's kind of like Goku's lost child, who's essentially just a plot device to do whatever Trunks does, and in terms of getting into mischiefs in the series. And other than just getting into mischief, I think that Dragon Ball Super had the perfect opportunity to make Goten Goku's second son that actually had more of a forefront opportunity in the series. And considering the fact that I just mentioned that both the present Trunks and the future Trunks could have had more development, I think having Goten have more development with Goku could have been something interesting in the series. We never really saw Goten have almost any moments with Goku throughout the entire Dragon Ball franchise, other than the fact that they met each other and it's implied that they trained with each other leading up to the ending of Z. But other than that, there really has been no real established bond between Goten and Goku the same way that there was with Gohan and Goku, and I know that they're going to make a lot of bad dad jokes with Goku now. So I think that that's definitely something that they could have touched upon in making Goten a more reliable character. And funny enough, even Dragon Ball GT did something to at least somewhat develop Goten's character as well. So those are two direct points I wanted to talk to you guys about Goten and Trunks. And last but not least, for the grand finale, guys, we gotta talk about the biggest reason of all that you probably predicted. And this is the fact that Goten and Trunks have not been aged in Dragon Ball Super. Now, one thing that I should point out before I continue this is the fact that Dragon Ball follows the shonen manga genre, which essentially means that it is a manga that is intended for young to teenage boys, and because of that, that's why in a lot of shonen manga, a child protagonist or a teenage protagonist is usually the main character, because that's what the genre is aiming towards. And because of this, Geekdom and I and Halcyon have theorized that the reason why they haven't aged Goten and Trunks is because they want them to stay kids to keep the shonen genre alive. And although I think that is great, and although I think that that is something that they're trying to hold on to, in terms of Dragon Ball, it's not really necessary, because Goten and Trunks, even though they're child characters, they've been so thrown away in the story that I don't really honestly think that keeping them as children really keeps the shonen genre alive, because they're not really in the story at all. And also, it's not hard to age Goten and Trunks, and this just create another childlike character to also get into the Dragon Ball story if you really honestly want kids to be involved. So I think that that's a cheap excuse that Dragon Ball Super might be using with these characters, but some cool moments like a teenage Gotenks or getting closer to an adult Gotenks would have been a lot cooler for the franchise. And I do think that if Goten and Trunks were older, I think it would also stop them from being so annoying as just being two childlike characters that always get into mischief. So I definitely think out of all of the big reasons that aging Goten and Trunks has to be number one as to how Super has wasted them. But if I'm going to talk about Goten and Trunks, I have to talk about some of the problems that Dragon Ball Super kind of dug for themselves in terms of never being able to develop these characters. And the main problem is the fact that there is a major power creep between Goten and Trunks and all of the other characters. With so many strong characters in the franchise itself, it's very hard to write Goten and Trunks to really compete with everybody else. And the only way that they could have done this is if they started off Goten and Trunks from continuing their training from the Buu Saga at the very beginning of Dragon Ball Super. And because they haven't done it, and there's essentially been 5 arcs up until this point, it's very hard to make them compete with characters who are using God Ki and fighting against intergalactic characters in a multiversal tournament. And one comparison that I found a lot of my friends making is they used Boruto as an example. And the example they gave is the fact that because of the existence of Naruto and Sasuke and Boruto, it really reduces the amount of tension that Boruto has because of the fact that there are so many strong characters. It makes it hard for there to be threats that Naruto and Sasuke cannot stop themselves, and essentially that means that the weaker characters are never really going to get as much development because of the existence of much stronger characters. And this power creep problem is a reason as to why Goten and Trunks have been so irrelevant. And the next problem I want to talk about is the fact that Goten and Trunks aren't really popular enough, and I think this is also going back to another development problem, but honestly, if you think about it, with all the video games and Dragon Ball series that we've had, it's kind of hard to take these characters and just say Goten and Trunks are going to get the shine, considering the fact that Toei and Akira Toriyama has done so little to develop their character, that if you try to develop them over the characters that people actually care about, it would feel very awkward in the show. And it's sort of like if you haven't developed them through all of these years, you kind of feel weird in developing them all of a sudden right now. And I think their lack of popularity development has definitely been something that has hurt them in the franchise. And if Dragon Ball had developed Goten and Trunks' character over the course of years, this wouldn't have been a problem. And last but not least, guys, we gotta talk about the last problem, which is the fact that Super takes place before the end of Z. And this creates kind of its own problem within itself, because of the fact that at the end of Z, it's been implied that Goten and Trunks have gotten a lot softer and they don't really fight the same way they did as kids. So if Super is going to try and continue up until the ending to Z and at least keep the general points of story direction, that means that Goten and Trunks shouldn't be training and getting any development anyways. So because of the fact that the show would have to loosely tie itself to the ending of the franchise of Z, this means that Super only has so much room they could even have used those characters anyways. And honestly, with all of these points I made in the video, I do think there were many opportunities that Goten and Trunks could have had, such as fighting in a better fashion against, the resurrection of F characters, or even having a better filler arc as opposed to what we got from the Planet Poltafu saga. So ultimately, guys, that's been my thoughts for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. Remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.